Parliament goes into recess next Tuesday, 30th of July, and will reconvene on the 2nd of September. All right for some. But Andrew, as you write in your summer essay for the New Statesman this week, available on Thursday, Starmer's government are going to be taking nothing for granted over the summer. And I want you to tell me about these no complacency meetings.
So this is a very interesting innovation. To the extent we think what goes on at the heart of government is interesting, I think this is. So Keir Starmer has his first big morning meetings at 8:30. 9 o'clock, there's a meeting chaired by Pat McFadden, who has effectively become the cabinet minister for politics, party politics and all of that. He's Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. And around the table are 11 people, senior advisors and spads and ministers from across Whitehall, but including, very interestingly, Morgan McSweeney, who is, again, absolutely crucial to the Starmer operation. And the point of these meetings is, in the welter of ministerial decisions about this, that and the other, and the kind of huge press and hubbub of day-to-day governing, they must not lose sight of politics. They must not lose sight of all those voters who gave Labour a vote, but rather grudgingly, or didn't vote Labour, all the people who voted Reform. In other words, they have to remember the whole time it's a very mobile, turbulent, unpredictable electorate out there. So this week, this day, this Tuesday, this Wednesday, what have we done for them? What is the politics of this? How are we going to sell it? We've taken this decision. What is the politics underlying that? What are the opposition going to do to weaponise it? How can we fight back? So, in other words, the sense that we fought a very, very intense and successful political campaign during the election. Now we're in government. We mustn't forget that politics exists. And this is going to happen 5 days a week. And
it's interesting that those two men have been put in charge, because obviously Morgan McSweeney led that campaign from behind the scenes. Pat McFadden was campaign director, wasn't he?
But they're both very close.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But we're seeing that continuity come through in government.
Yes, and if you want to twist the thing one stage further, Rachel Reeves, who was the other absolutely crucial figure at the heart of government, in some respects, in terms of the decisions she is going to be making in the next couple of months, more important even than the Prime Minister. Her parliamentary private secretary is a new MP from Scotland, who is Morgan McSweeney's wife.
Quite a close-knit community there. The summer, without the day-to-day parliamentary business, a bit of an opportunity for Labour to progress on some of these tough decisions that are facing them. The $8 billion or so they're going to have to find for teachers and nurses. An agreement on junior doctors' pay, do you think we'll see soon?
I think essential. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm hearing it might come as soon as this weekend. I don't know if you're hearing that kind of thing.
It could come very, very soon indeed, I think. I know that, almost in fact, probably literally at this moment, Wes Streeting is sitting down with the junior doctors' BMA committee to try and thrash this out. I mean, he's going to have to find some more money, that's clear, but how much we don't know. And I think this is the first really, really crucial and very, very interesting dilemma facing the government, because there is quite a revolt, not just on the left of the Labour Party, but right through the Labour Party on the question of getting rid of the two-child benefit cap. Now, this is seen by anti-poverty campaigners of all kinds as the single biggest thing driving so many British families into poverty and indeed into destitution. It is loathed by Gordon Brown. It is loathed by the Archbishop of Canterbury. I was talking to a cabinet minister who said, listen, this is not a left-wing thing. We all absolutely hate this. I think Rachel Reeves, this guy said, absolutely hates it. But it's going to cost about £3 billion to take it off. And there is no money, or very, very little money indeed, even if they raise taxes in the autumn, which I think they will, because they don't have many taxes they can raise. So there's not a lot of money. So the question is that the bigger priority, or is the bigger priority sorting out the public sector wage disputes and avoiding strikes in the NHS, strikes in English schools, etc., this autumn, really early in the lifetime of the new government? And I think, I've talked to lots of people, everybody's being very guarded at the moment. We'll know more next week when Rachel Reeves is making her sort of summer big intervention. But I think they are not going to go for lifting the two-child cap. I think they say, we will get there. We're going to get there eventually. I was talking to one minister very close to Keir Starmer this week who said, listen, we will do it. We just can't do it yet. We have to get the finances stabilised. And we can tell people that's the direction of travel, but not now.
And you write that this phrase, patience, please, or give us some time is going to be
It's right
repeated.
across the agenda. I mean, think of the review of defence going on under Lord Robertson of Port Ellen at the moment. That's really, really important. Are we going to spend X amount of money on new fighter jets or missiles or whatever? Given what's going on with Trump, given what's going on with Ukraine, what are the priorities? But they have to get on with it. I mean, they have promised 2.5% of GDP on defence. But if they can't say when, it's not really a valid promise. And in terms of having authority on the world stage on these issues, they really have to crack on with it. But again, there's a review, and it's patience, please, give us time. And that's right across the board.
On the two-child benefit cap, I mean, there are a multitude of oppositions to it, aren't there? Obviously, there's the core one is anti-poverty campaigners, but we've also seen this quite robust feminist argument against it from Rosie Duffield, for example, saying you're taking away women's choice over their bodies. And further on the right, there's kind of a family defence from people like Miriam Cates, who's obviously left Parliament now. But, why are we discouraging people to have children, especially actually when our population is falling?
I think Nigel Farage is against it, I read somewhere as well. I mean, it is an extraordinary, right the way through to the SNP and some of the, the left-wing independents who got elected, a massive coalition against it. However, the British public is not in favour of lifting the cap. Yeah. It's quite popular. 60% of people approve it. And I wonder if there is a kind of racial or community aspect to this. In other words, it's immigrant families who tend to have the much larger families, more children, and are claiming benefits for them. And a lot of white working class resentment to that, I think, is built into this. Politicians don't talk about it for obvious reasons, but I'm afraid it is there.
Next on the agenda that is going to be a problem, you think, the clean energy, green industrial strategy. What's going to happen there? I'm
a hard-working and attentive member of the New Statesman staff, which means that I read the Daily Telegraph, I read the Spectator, I read all the right-wing press as well, and talk to a lot of right-wing politicians. And it's pretty clear to me that the green agenda is absolutely in the targets of the right at the moment. They want to argue that Ed Miliband, who's not terribly popular in the country, this is a classic, silly Ed Miliband policy. It's going to be very, very expensive. There's no way that we can decarbonise by 2035. And if we do, it'll mean much higher bills and more insecurity for ordinary consumers. We're such a small part of the world energy market. And actually, Helen Thompson of the New Statesman wrote a really interesting, well-argued piece against it. And I think this speaks to one of the bigger challenges for this government. I think to win the permission of the general public for delaying the big stuff, for that patience please thing, they have to do two things. I think one of them is that when they make these big decisions, we're going to go for the public sector pay. We're going to spend this $3 billion on public sector pay, not on the two-child cap, because we can't spend the same money twice. They have to go out and really argue for the choices they've made, explain them in clear terms. And I think more generally, they have to be much better at storytelling than they have been. They have to talk about the journey we're on, where we've got to, where's coming next, and actually put a larger political narrative in front of the country than they did, for instance, during the general election campaign. So I think on all of those things, if people can see where we're going, if people can see some movement, some progress somewhere, the junior doctors' strike resolved, X number of housing starts begun, these conversations with these water companies about this amount of pollution started getting on, and things are actually changing on the ground. And at the same time, Keir Starmer and the key ministers are explaining constantly to us in clear, understandable, vivid English what they're about, then I think it'll work. But those two things are essential.
I mean, a weak area for Labour really during the election campaign was immigration, and it was certainly where the Conservatives wanted to hit them hardest, and obviously Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. The summer, typically, the weather's better, but we're going to see more crossings, aren't we? What do you see Yvette Cooper doing? I mean, smash the gangs isn't really an answer to what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. And that's going to become an urgent problem, isn't it, within days, weeks? It
is, and Yvette Cooper herself has told the Commons this problem is going to get worse before it gets better. I think demonstrating that, a sort of policing, an investigative crackdown on the gangs is going to make a real difference to the number of people coming over. Now the Gaza threat has been removed. I think that's going to be very difficult. I think it's one of the biggest unresolved policy problems, I think, for the government going ahead. And I think they will end up, there'll be lots of rows, lots of spills before this is over. I suspect they will end up with ID cards. Something that Yvette Cooper and others have said they are vehemently against. But I think, because one of the big pull factors to the UK is that you can come here as a migrant and you can access public health, eventually public housing and education, all public services without any origins in this country. You can come in and you can just get it. That's not the case in France. It's not the case in many European countries. And I think some kind of ID card system. So you have to prove your identity, where you were born, before you can get access to education or whatever. Is going to be, is one of the ways that as a government you can demonstrate that you have got control, you can got grip over this situation. I mean, at the moment, we literally don't know how many people live in this country or how many are coming in each day. We have no idea of the flows in and out in detailed terms, or the number of people in the country. And if you think you have to plan, roads, you have to plan public services of all kinds going ahead, and you don't know how many people you're planning for, that is a problem.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've spoken a lot as a magazine about the size of the problem confronting Labour, how it feels that everything's broken, whether that's our NHS, the education system, we can't even give our residents clean water. How, Starmer and the government will say, give us time. How long have they got, do you think, before people run out of patience?
Oh, I think they've got a couple of years.
Okay.
But they have to show progress in that couple of years. And I think that's a very interesting issue for journalism like that of the New Statesman, how we treat them. I think there's a real danger right across the board. Journalists love to go into premature opposition. And there's that kind of, I think, slightly lazy assumption that they're all crooks. Everything is going to be a failure. Everything is a disaster. There's this problem, there's that problem, there's the next problem. If we're going to advance as a country, we need a little bit of national optimism. We need to have a sort of stronger sense of ourselves and a belief that things can get better. But once you start to talk like that, you sound like a kind of shill for the government. You sound like the most boring journalist in Britain, which I may very well turn out to be.
But the government don't want that. I mean,
they don't.
We had the pleasure of hosting the Prime Minister at the New Statesman's summer party, and actually it was really powerful, his message to the room.
He bounced in and he gave a really interesting address to numerous hacks, but mainly to the New Statesman. And one of the things he said that really struck me, he said, look, I know that you're going to be a critical friend. I know you're going to put me under scrutiny and challenge and all the rest of it. And so you should. He said, the best decisions I have taken have been the ones that have had the most scrutiny and the most challenge before I took them. The worst decisions, he said, that I've taken have been the ones that I took just by myself. And I thought that was a remarkably humble and interesting thing for a Prime Minister to say. I can't imagine Boris Johnson saying that. I certainly can't imagine Liz Truss saying that. And that to me was a sign and symbol of new times. And I think that we need to respond by going into the big policy dilemmas, the challenges. We were talking about the two-child cap and the environmental project in detail.
And the trade-offs that these entail.
And really pushing back in a grown-up way. Nothing comes for nothing. There's always trade-offs. There's always a downside. But trying to challenge the government properly and seriously and in a grown-up way. And I think if we do that, we'll have some very interesting journalism in 5 years ahead.
A grown-up politics, which I think we've seen in the last 18 days now, deserves a grown-up media response.
And I think the public are fed up, are bored rigid with a politics of sort of clownish, slapdash, misbehaviour and selfishness on the one hand, and a journalism which reports nothing else on the other.